when you're pumping these fluids down the hole, imagine let's just say you're in a mall. And then there's a ton of people in the mall and the fire alarm goes off. Everybody in that mall is going to go closest to the fastest exit and the quickest way to get out of that mall. And that's the same with the fluids. So there's only going to be, say, one door or a few of these perfs that are taking most of the fluid. And so say we were at that mall, we were to close that door and not allow people to escape from it anymore. It's different. We need them to get out. But if we were to close that door, those people would start going to alternate exits from that point. And so this diversion is to plug up the actual perfs and get the exit, the pressure in this case, instead of people, and start breaking that. Welcome to the Grizzled Geologist Podcast. I'm Keith Carden, your host. Thanks for joining us. I brought a friend today, Steve Daly. He's with Neumeyer Drilling Fluids, but he has a really long history in the completions and diversion space in the completions world of our industry. So we're going to touch base on that. But in the meantime, again, thank you for being here. I'm always looking for people to come on the show. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. And feel free to hit me up on my website, the www.thegrizzledgeologist.com. The same moniker for my YouTube page, but LinkedIn is a really good way to get a hold of me. But I do answer the emails as well. So anyhow, we're going to be talking about kind of a different subject than my usual topics, although we have discussed this on the show before, but we're going to get into kind of some of the nitty-gritty on completions and diversion. And I'm going to go ahead and let Steve take over from here and introduce himself, give a little bit of a background, and then we're going to get into our technical topics.
Hello, I'm Steve Daly. I worked 26 years with the Baker Hughes Corp in the Baker Oil Tool division. And from there, I worked at TTS, True Tubing Solutions, in their division that was mainly selling diversion products, frac diversion products. So I've got a lot of history and a lot of study and on diversion products work, why we run them, where we run them, how do you evaluate them. Everybody's wanting to know why you run diversion, and the main reason is to up production. It's simple. Mm-hmm. When I go in and I'm talking to people about diversion, the first thing I tell them is, well, we can talk all day long on how does it work, why does it work, this, that, and the other. And the only thing that really comes down to or matters is the production. So you're looking at your production reports 2 months down the road, 3 months down the road, 4 months down the road. If you've upped your production enough to pay for the product, there you go. It's just a common sense thing. A lot of people try to get really technical with the diversion products. Really, there's nothing I'm going to get really technical about today. There's really two types of diversion. One is called a near field diversion, and one is called a far field diversion. The near field diversion is the one that I worked on at TTS mainly, and you divert at the wellbore. You plug frac holes and you move your frac. And that's as simple as that.
Let's take one quick step back. Since you're kind of the expert on this, because we're starting to get in and talk terms near and far field, and let's get into the basics, because this one is this doesn't improve the economics of the show, but at the end of the day, what it does improve is people's knowledge and information, and that's kind of what I'm trying to get out here. And so why don't you take us back to a recently drilled well that has now been perforated with guns, and talk to us about what the completion is and how diversion mixes into that. And I'm going to give the quick geologic short answer. What we use diversion for, and the way that I've seen it as a geologist, is to get our fracs out further. And to touch more rock would be kind of the way I would put it in a quotation. So why don't I let the actual expert who knows what he's talking about get into this and kind of talk about, what are we doing? We're coming in to complete these wells, and we're pumping all this stuff down there, and a lot of the time, diversion is a part of that. So, what distinguishes diversion from just prop for example?
Well, prop can be a diversion, and people have
Hmm.
used it for diversion, but it
Yep.
doesn't seem to be as good as these products that's come along in the last, let's just say, since we started drilling horizontal.
Sure.
Diversion wasn't a big deal. They did have some diversion, and they were bio balls.
Okay.
On vertical well bores, they would shoot 200 holes and run 400 balls, hoping
Okay.
it would plug some of the holes.
Hmm.
It was somewhat efficient. But let's just take a well that's just drilled. There's no perfs in it. We're getting ready to start completing the well. Of course, it's going to be predetermined how many feet of well bore you're wanting to frac at one time. I mean, the rule of thumb is most people don't go over 250 or 300 foot
Hmm.
uh, of the well
Per
bore
stage,
per
right?
stage.
Yep.
Per
And so
stage,
just for the layman in here, what we do is we drill the well. We run most of the time we run casing. We're not going to get into sliding sleeves right now.
no,
But so we run metal pipe down the hole and then we pump cement behind it to kind of lock it in place. And actually technically it also keeps the well bore in connection with the rock that way, because if you have a gap between that steel casing and the well bore, all kinds of problems. We call that the annulus. That's the last thing we ever want in this situation. And so again, just for the non-technical completions people, we drill this well, we have this, and oftentimes now up to 3 miles of pipe in the hole. And what we can't just go down and pop holes in that and do the whole thing at once. And so what we do is we break it up into stages where we block off the rest of the well and pump into just a specific part of the well bore, which, like Steve was mentioning, is generally like 200 to 300 feet, right?
correct.
Okay.
That so what you do is you determine how many perf holes you want in that stage.
Okay.
So let's just say, for example, you go down and they shoot them in clusters,
Hmm.
which means you'll have like 6 or 12 perf holes in a cluster. You move up the hole, shoot another 6 or 12,
Hmm.
another 6 or 12, and they're called clusters. So let's got 6 clusters in a 200-foot interval in that wellbore. So you go down, you shoot all your holes, you start your frac. Well, as that frac goes down, it's going to start breaking rock. Things are going to start breaking down. The frac is going to go out the perf holes into formation and start breaking rock. Now, you said you want the frac to go as far as you can. Well, we kind of fight that nowadays because of
Sure.
offset wellbores. We
Yeah.
don't
Yes.
want it to go all the way. Let's say you got a well over here 2,000 feet.
Yep.
Well, you don't want it. What the buzzword is called bashing.
Yes, and that's right. And this we have come into this more through the years, and that is an
Yeah.
antiquated way for me to describe the frac because we do tailor it because we have a lot of information. So go ahead. Yeah, you're correct about that for sure.
So there's two different types of diversion. There's
Okay.
one that's called a near field, and there's one that's called far field. And this is predetermined. The near field is pods. You drop frac pods from surface during the frac. They go down and they find the holes that's taking the fluid.
Yes.
They get caught up in the fluid. They go straight to that hole. Say you've got 70 perf holes in your stage. Let's say you drop 30 pods.
Yep.
And those 30 pods go down and find the holes that's taking the frac, plug
Yep.
those holes, moves the frac to brand new perf holes,
Yes.
breaks those perf holes down. Now you're fracking brand new rock at a different interval. It could be above or below.
Well,
So
and
as you're frac,
let me give you a real world analogy for other people that may not understand exactly what we're saying. When you're pumping these fluids down the hole, imagine let's just say you're in a mall and then there's a ton of people in the mall and the fire alarm goes off. Everybody in that mall is going to go closest to the fastest exit and the quickest way to get out of that mall. And that's the same with the fluids. So there's only going to be, say, one door or a few of these perfs that are taking most of the fluid. And so say we were at that mall, we were to close that door and not allow people to escape from it anymore. And it's different. We need them to get out. But if we were to close that door, those people would start going to alternate exits from that point. And so this diversion is to plug up the actual perfs and get the exit, the pressure in this case, instead of people, to go to the next closest exit and start breaking that.
correct. and
Okay.
you can do one drop per stage. You could drop half the balls, plug half the holes, finish up the frac on the next stage. You could actually do two drops, which
Okay.
you could do a third and a third and a third. And what you're trying to do is frac every foot of that stage. You've drilled it. It's cost you money. You've got casing. Every foot of that wellbore costs you X amount of dollars, and you
Mhm.
want every foot of that touched by a frac so you can bring the production in.
Yeah.
If it gets left behind on the frac, odds are it may not ever even produce anything. That
Right.
one piece, and that's what we found starting out with this. We used to just rear back and frac it.
Yeah.
Well, we were leaving a lot of perf holes unfracked, a lot of the wellbore unfracked. So now we've come up with diversions, and this is the near field diversion that
Okay.
plugs the hole in the casing. The far field diversion, it's the same concept. You shoot, you start fracking, and you start dropping a chemical. And there's different ones. Like Halliburton has one called Biovert, and there's others. There's a Polylock. There's different type of chemicals that they pump that's designed to go through the perf hole into the formation, and once it gets into the formation, it starts swelling and
Okay.
locking up, and it locks up at the perf. I mean,
Okay.
at
At the
the
fracture.
fracture point,
Yes.
and diverts it to another fracture point.
Yeah.
So,
In the
so
same
you're
concept that
moving
we just talked about, but
right,
not just through a circular hole. We're talking
right.
about planar features and, plugging up
We're,
those existing pathways to get the pressure to go and break new rock.
right. So it's two different thoughts, and we tried running them together. It doesn't work very well, and we just don't get the results we want. So it's all predetermined before
Okay.
you go in. You're either going to run near field or far field diversion.
Oh, okay. It's not
Uh,
both.
it's not both.
Okay.
We've tried both. It just doesn't work. It gets in
Good.
each other. It looks like it's spiked itself. Okay.
I could see that. Sure. Getting messy and, you're
Right.
having to do it. Maybe you would pump the far field first, but then it starts to gum up the perf. So you've got kind of a confusing
Yeah.
place for the near field stuff to go.
Right. So we found it's a lot better to do one or the other. In different fields and different formations, one of these will probably work better at a certain formation. And then you go to another formation, the other may work better.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that's the reason you want to get all your production reports and get as much information as you can in that field and go back and talk to the engineers. They're normally really receptive to give you information.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not the same company, you can go ask them, hey, did you guys run a diverter?
Sure.
Yes, we ran Biovert, or we run Polylock, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, or we run near field. Of course, production reports and all that anybody can get that information. So you go back and they go, yeah, we increased production by 20% by running Biovert.
Such and
Or
such. Sure.
so if you're drilling a well in that field, the first thing I would do would go talk to the neighboring wells and go, did you even run diversion?
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody runs diversion. There's other methods they use. And so there's a lot of information now. So I suggest anybody drilling in that field finds out what people have done, check the the production reports, see if
Completion reports and everything.
yeah, and then you make up your mind. You talk to these different service companies, and find out. The cost is another thing. The cost varies greatly on each one of these products.
Mm-hmm.
Some are a lot more expensive than others. Some are a lot easier to run than others. I mean, like the Biovert and the Polylock, you just pour it into the tub as you're
You just
mixing
put it into the
put it
the
into your
hopper.
frac,
Okay.
put it into your frac, and you're sand frac with it goes down the hole with the balls that are near field. You have to have a separate pump off to the side that pumps the pods into the system.
Yep.
So it's more expensive, but in a lot of cases it's more effective. So those are the things that everybody's looking at today.
So on the far field, I have some questions because at my last gig, the CEO's he's a kind of a completions guy, and he showed me they had done a different system. So it'd be far field, but it looked like kind of flakes, but it was like different sizes. So they would send, for example, the fine really find one out first. So like kind of, that I guess you'd pump the job to some degree first, right? And then you pump in the fine grain diverter to get way out. And then they kind of stage it up. I guess. So what was I seeing? What does some of these diverters look like? Are they like little flaky looking materials, or is it like you said, chemical? I'm thinking the almost propylene glycol in a way where you pump it down and it swells up like an Orby in the fracture. Was that probably more looking at kind of a prop style change, or is that what we would call traditional diversion?
Well, all of these diverters are made to be biodegradable, number one.
Okay.
In other words, over time and heat, it breaks it down so it'll flow back as a fluid. You don't
Yes,
want that
to
diverter
stay there,
staying in those cracks.
right?
So you can make these diverters any size you want. I mean, it's a man-made. It's called polylactic acid,
Okay.
which is a biodegradable. So
Okay.
you can make different sizes, and they call them mill sizes, I think. I mean, you can get them from fine all the
Yeah,
way to very coarse.
like
And
1,000 to 100 mesh kind of spread.
yeah, you could go like 100 mesh or and then down to, like a smaller 50 mesh or whatever.
Sure.
So that's what you were looking at is somebody had the idea that that's the way they like to run their diverter.
Okay.
Small first, get on out there, start slowly filling cracks, bigger, come in,
Hmm.
completely fill the crack, move the frac. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. I mean,
Okay.
we've done enough of it now that it's customized. I mean, this is all predetermined, mainly due through completion reports, production reports. But that's what you were looking at. They were just different, like a sand grade, like you said, 100 mesh or 50 mesh or whatever.
That's great.
But to keep moving on, see, and
Yeah.
then you run a bridge plug, a wireline set bridge plug, pump down. You set it to start your next stage. Then when you pump your plug down, you also pump your uh, perforating guns down with it.
Okay.
So you pump your plug, set it wireline, shoot your holes, come out of the hole, repeat. Do it again by
Hmm.
pumping these diverters and this, that. So you do this on how many stages? I mean, we've done it on as many as 100 stages in a well
Yeah.
bore, 120 stages in a well
Yeah. And
bore.
would have 50,
Yeah,
60 in a 2 mile
yeah,
well. So, yep.
yeah, 50s, 60s, nothing. So now you break it down. Now you've got X amount of bridge plugs in the well bore, depending on how many feet each stage is. So that one very important part to all this is when we're fracking those wells, we're running FR, which is friction reducer.
Okay.
Okay. That's a friction reducer that goes in the chemical that pumps the well that brings down the friction, which brings down pressures. Without the friction reducers, your pressures would get a lot higher. So that's built into the frac. So when you go to drill your plugs, I know I'm jumping way
Oh,
ahead,
no, you're good.
but
Yeah.
once you go, everything's done and you come in and you drill your plugs, you got to clean the plugs out of the wellbore.
Yep.
Okay. The drill out company also uses a friction reducer. Through tubing solution, there's a lot of them, Halliburton. They go in to drill these plugs. Well, they're pumping what we call FR, which is a friction reducer.
Hmm.
Okay. And there's three types of friction reducer. There's anionic, cationic, and nonionic. There's they're three different animals. And in a lot of cases, they are not compatible.
Hmm.
If
Okay.
you mix like an anionic with a cationic, you can come up with gummy bears
Okay.
and slugs that are
Sure.
in your wellbore.
Sure.
It's happened a lot. It's happened a lot. So what you want to do when you're doing this, and it's very important, and most people step right over this, is you need to drill out with the same FR you frack with. It's simple.
Okay.
You just bring out either the anionic,
God, how many
cationic,
times did that
non-ionic.
happen where somebody went and drilled out with the wrong
No, it
fluid?
happens all the time, and then
And
and
is it a
then some
catastrophe? What do you have to do?
can be if it gets bad enough, it can gum your whole wellbore.
So you can't even really like drill it out or anything,
Produce it.
huh?
No, it creates gummy bears. They call it. It's like a
Oh man.
sludge.
Okay.
Most cases, it's not nearly that devastating. A lot of
Okay.
cases is you'll go in and you'll start circulating up this sludge. It looks like gummy bears, and people don't really know why it's
So
going
that's
on,
where
and
the
they,
calls
you
start.
know, and they start blaming the FR. I mean the diversion. They
Yeah,
say, well, that diversion chemical you run
yeah.
caused
Coming
this.
up. Yep.
And in reality, what you've done is you mixed two FRs together and created.
And it just cracks me up. There's always one way from something to mess something up in this
Yeah,
business.
yeah, I know. But this is so simple, and it doesn't happen on every wellbore. Okay,
Yeah,
I mean it doesn't happen on every wellbore, but it happens on enough that you need to because there's no difference in the cost.
yeah,
Just make sure that the guy that's coming out to drill your plugs has the same FR as what you fracked with, and you'll never see the problem.
yeah.
It's just simple. It's something that people have
That's just
really
a
overlooked.
communication thing. We even see it on my end. Tower
Yeah,
changes and the simplest shit can just lead to
you
freaking
got it. It's
complete
all
meltdowns.
the biggest or the most important thing on this whole well from the time you go out and you lease the land to drill the well to put it on is called communication.
Oh, yeah.
There's more screw ups
Yep.
happen on wells because of communication than any other reason. It's
Yep.
just you're exactly right. This deal with the FRs is nothing but communication.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know,
That's all it is.
one guy needs to pass that information on. Hey, when you come out to drill out the plugs, make sure you drill out the anionic. And it's that simple.
Yeah.
You never see the problem. But if you miss that step, there's a chance of coming in and mixing the two FRs, have a big slug, a big mess on your hands, and well, you go.
Well, so what are some other mistakes that people can make in this line of business, like going in with the wrong diverter, when they knew better, what are some other things that you've seen?
Well, the BioVert, which Halliburton sells, is a really hard on pumps.
Okay.
It's really hard to pump, and the frac companies don't really like pumping because you run it through your pumps. It's a real
It wears
thick.
out pump parts or does it just make it
It
kind of
does,
rev
and it
too
can
high? Yeah.
gum up a few things, and when it's flowing back, you find you can see where it hadn't completely broke down. It comes back. It's real kind of sluggish. It's
Okay. Okay.
there's other products out there that you can prevent that. Now, whether they work as good or not, that's another question. So
Sure.
that's one thing you've got to look at that most people don't look at.
Hmm.
Running the far field is just a matter of pouring bags into the hopper.
Yeah.
The guys on the trucks do it. There's not really any way to mess that up,
Uh-huh.
unless you don't put it in there.
Yeah.
When you're
Yeah.
running
Right.
you know, when you're
Now I've
running
heard of that, believe it or not.
yeah,
I've heard of some. They didn't put it in. They didn't run the
on it.
diverter. They didn't do this or that. I've heard of that for sure.
Well, it happens, and then when you're running the near field, which is the pods, you really need somebody out there that knows what they're looking at, sitting in the truck and watching the pressure spikes
Yeah.
and when to drop them, when not to drop them, because you can get yourself in a bind. You can completely plug every perf hole and pressure out where you can't break anything else down. So then, of course, you're in there running something in to clean the pods off the perfs. But really, there's not a lot of other missteps. There's really none of these products are really going to mess your well up unless you get in the FR stuff. They're all biodegradable. You can clean them out. Once you run this stuff, you run the TD, come out, clean your well bores. I mean, I don't. I really do like the diverters.
Hmm.
The other method that people are trying over the diverters is called limited entry, which means they may go down and shoot 20 holes in a 200-foot
Yeah.
section. Okay. What they're doing is they're forcing all their frac out 20 holes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because there's not enough holes. They're going to break those holes down versus, let's say, you got 100 holes.
Yeah.
Okay. And unless you run diversion, you're not going to break down all 100 holes.
Hmm.
Uh, so, so some people, instead of running these near field
They
diverters,
just
they just
reduce the
run
number of
limited
perfs.
entry. Yeah, they just run limited entry. One way of making sure you got all your perf holes fracked. People just need to, especially on the near field, everybody needs to know what's going on. You need to have a little class, a little school. Say, here's what we're doing. Here's how we're doing it. If we see Everybody needs to communicate and shut the job down and go, okay, look, I know this is what's going on. Let's
Yep.
discuss it. It's
Yep.
just like any other job, just like any other practice.
Yeah, and it is, and not to, it's a straightforward process, but there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of equipment out there, and then of course, you've got the perf guns themselves. Those are, and those
Yep.
are laid out before they run them in. That's probably one of the more potentially dangerous things at the oil rig, but it's a really interesting and cool process. You run these literal guns in the hole for people that
Yeah.
didn't know that. These are literal guns shooting bullets essentially to shoot holes through the steel and into the rock. And, it's just a really amazing process. Is there anything that you wanted to cover on the completions and diversion side before you give Neumeyer a little plug?
No, I think that's pretty much. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. I mean, we're doing the same completions today we did 15 years ago. It's just what they call plug and perf. There's
Yeah.
other ways of doing it. You can do open hole packer systems.
Yeah. Which
That's
I
with
actually like in a
sleeves.
lot of cases, in carbonates
I
and
like
stuff
them.
like that. Yep.
It saves so much frac time because you're just
Yeah.
dropping a ball,
Yep.
shifting a sleeve, and hitting another frac.
Yep.
The downside is you've only got one point of
Yeah,
entry
you only
in
have,
that stage.
it does change the frac, but in certain
Right.
rocks, it can work out pretty good.
Yeah, and you're
Well,
just fracking between two packers. I
yep.
like the open hole system in certain. It just
In
saves
the
so
right
much money.
situation, we used it at a West Edmond Hunt Lime unit,
Yeah.
but that was a big old loose carbonate.
Yep. Yeah, and you're just, you're not worried about your cement job behind it, and you just got two
Right.
packers you're fracking
Yep.
between.
And there's the challenge of cramming it down the hole, but we actually had a lot of luck with it. Back in the day,
Yeah.
people were afraid of running them because they'd fire off and, worried about dog leg and this and that. But we actually had a lot of luck getting them down. I was surprised. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I set up a lot of those with Baker. I mean, like a lot. And they're good completions, but really the completions are basically the same as they were.
Yeah.
We just
Higher rates
really had.
though, right? I mean, we're getting one thing that I have seen happen would, we're at that 100+ barrel a minute pump
Hmm.
rates, they got more
Hmm.
horsepower out there, but
Hmm.
it's still the same concept. All
Hmm.
the only knobs that they're turning are just physical parameters. If you
Right.
increase the rate, you get this much more force, or whatever the case may be. So
Right. Right. And everybody's got their own perf schemes they like. Everybody's
yeah,
got their
yeah.
own
But just
frac
like on the
schemes.
geology side, we have our special way of doing stuff and making
Right.
our special progs or whatever that is. Well, why don't you
Yeah.
tell everybody about where you work now? Give your company a
Sure.
little bit of a plug. And
Sure.
the main thing you can't forget is that you have to give words of wisdom at the end. So think of those surprise. You have to give words of wisdom.
When Well, I'm working for
Newmont.
Neumeyer Drilling Fluids. We handle all types of drilling fluids. We have our own mixing plants, our own trucks, our own drivers. We have very few third-party charges. We've been in business since 2012. We've drilled more wells in western Oklahoma, mainly in the Cherokee Formation, which is the new hot formation that
Yeah.
everybody's looking at.
Yep.
We drill more wells than any other mud company. We've drilled over 30 this year
Okay.
in the Cherokee alone.
Well, anytime you pull
We
up an activity map, that's 3/4 of the rigs in Oklahoma are running over there right now.
Exactly. Well,
Yep.
they're making great wells.
Well, wait, yeah, they are. And we drilled that one in Lipscomb County, right?
Right.
So
But we've broke records on time. Our people are more experienced than anybody. Our main customer is Mewburn. We've been working with them since 2012, and
yep.
they're the ones that's really in the Cherokee,
Yeah.
and we've
They're a
drilled
big
a
deal.
lot of wells.
Yeah, no, they're a big deal, man.
Now they're big, and we keep going. We're a small company. We're independently owned. We
Awesome.
can maneuver. The buck stops here. We're very flexible. We can work with anybody doing anything. We're not under the corporate thumb. So it's a very unique, very good company. We've got 4 yards. We got our main yards, Canadian, Texas.
Okay.
Our next largest yard's Clinton, Oklahoma.
Okay.
Then we have a yard. We have a yard in Odessa, Texas, and one in Chickasha. So we got 2 in Texas, 2 in Oklahoma. Then we're growing. Last year we added 3 yards last year, so Our company's growing, even
Awesome.
in kind of a down market.
Yeah.
But if you're drilling anywhere near that Cherokee, I highly suggest you get with us. We've got more experience than anybody out there.
Awesome.
Picking up more rigs every day because it
It's
just
been
makes
working
sense.
out. Well, I'll tell you
Working out.
this. I'd like for you, before you give your words of wisdom, I'd like to have you back on and let's have a podcast about drilling fluids. And if you need to bring somebody else from your company on to do it, that's a great topic for this podcast.
Yes.
That's the kind of basic information and people of the industry that I'd like to get out there. So I'd really appreciate
Yeah.
that. I'd love to get on and talk about drilling fluids next because it's a huge
Yeah.
part of what we do.
Oh, it's tremendous. I mean, and a huge part of the cost.
Yeah.
I
No,
mean,
it is. It is.
especially on these wells out like in the Cherokee, where I mean these things are very expensive wells and very expensive mud bills on them.
Yeah. Yep.
So it is a very, very big piece of it.
It's a big
Well,
piece.
yes.
Words of wisdom. You're on the hook.
Okay, let me think. Okay, words of wisdom. Technology is the words of wisdom. 3.5 years ago, we were drilling about the same amount of footage as we are today with almost twice as many rigs. We have lost half the rigs almost in like 4 years due to technology. We're way better at what we do. We're producing more oil in the United States today than we ever have. With fewer rigs running than you can imagine, we have lost so many jobs. Every time you lose a rig, you're losing jobs. I mean,
Yeah.
the job market is shrinking. And that's kind of a doomsday naysayer thing. But we're just getting so much better at what we do that technology is taking over. It's happened to us already, and it's coming, the other ways. I mean, with all the AI stuff, the robotic stuff, and all that, everybody's just got to get better at what they're doing. I mean, we got to sharpen our pencils. We got to get more educated.
Yep.
We got to go with the technology, learn it.
Yeah. And that's where the opportunity will be. Not everybody's going to
Yeah.
be on the rig anymore, but they certainly can be in front of a computer doing things that are,
Sure.
contributing to the overall success of the business.
Exactly.
Well, Steve, awesome. Those were great words of wisdom, honestly. You're a great guest. This was a lot of fun for me.
Well, thank you. And yeah, let's get together and we'll get a date set and we'll do a drilling fluid.
We will.
Okay.
And to everybody else out there, this is Keith Carden. Welcome and goodbye from the Grizzled Geologist Podcast. Make sure you reach out, like, subscribe, do all this stuff. And to all you completions engineers out there, keep pumping diverter harder and faster. Bye now.
You have to work